So I am going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the December 9th Westwood School Committee meeting. I'll start with the roll call attendance. Charlie?
Here.
Tony?
Here.
Carol?
Here.
Amanda?
Here.
Great. And I am clearly here, so we are all here. I'd like to recognize the live stream available online at www.westwood.k12.ma.us/live to provide real-time public access to the activities of the school committee in accordance with an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting is also being recorded for later broadcast on Westwood Media Center's platforms. As always, we thank Westwood Media Center. And before we get into the superintendent's report, I just wanted to let everybody know that we are Zooming again, because as I mentioned last month, we had some technological difficulties with running the hybrid of being in person and having people call in and participate via Zoom. As I am happy to say that those problems actually have been resolved. So we will be in person next January, in our next meeting in January. But we decided for November and December, in the interests of full participation and trying to reach as many people as possible, we would Zoom instead of being in person, because we did have to pick one option or the other. So we went with Zoom. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Emily for the superintendent's report.
Thanks, Maya. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to start just with a few updates related to COVID. So I'm going to share my screen. There we go. So I think, as you're all aware, the COVID numbers in Westwood have gone up significantly since our last school committee meeting in November. And so I just put back up the graphs that I had been showing before to show you sort of where our case count is here as a community. This is as of, I haven't seen numbers that came out this week, so this is as of last week. And correspondingly, the incident rate per 100,000 is also up. I think I skipped I thought I had percent positive, but I think we're at about 4.5% positivity at this point. To give you a sense of where we are with the current COVID cases, I put sort of a snapshot of our cases as of today in the district. And you can see that really what we're noticing is that at this point, we just have cases in every building. I would say that straddling the Thanksgiving break, as you know, we had this very strange surge in grade 6. And in fact, at one point, 10% of the 6th grade was out with COVID. But luckily, we seem to have gotten past that. And now we're seeing more of this distribution throughout the district. And I also have here to show you how that breaks down then by grade. So you can see here, we seem to be spread across just about every grade in the district. Of the 28 student cases at this moment, 4 of those are breakthrough cases in students who are fully vaccinated. 6 of those students are partially vaccinated. All of the staff cases that we're seeing are in fully vaccinated individuals. The good news is that as we speak, we are finishing up the second of our vaccine clinics for students ages 5 to 11. And we're very excited. We think that was really a success. I want to thank everybody who made that possible. Particularly, I want to thank the custodians at Thurston who have been setting up and breaking down the clinic. And thanks to everybody. The first day of the clinic, took a little longer. People had to be patient in line as we were filling out paperwork. For the second dose tonight, though, people were really flying right through. And so we were able to vaccinate, we think, about nearly a quarter of our elementary student population through our own clinic. Which is very exciting. There were some folks who came for their first dose tonight, which is fine. We will also run another clinic and be sure that those kids are able to get the second dose. In terms of vaccination rates, the public health data that was released last week indicates that as of now, 48% of 5 to 11-year-olds in Westwood have had at least one dose. And you can see here that the vaccination rates in children do vary quite a bit from community to community. This is where we are. And I, of course, am hoping that that number will increase as we get to the other side of the December break. When we return from break in January, and at that point, everyone who wants to have their child vaccinated, at least 5 years old and up, will have had the opportunity to do so. The kids who got their second dose tonight, for example, will be fully vaccinated just at the start of the vacation, which is exciting news for them, and then will be vaccinated when they come back to school when we return. I do want to say again, as we have been foreshadowing, when we return from break, the plan is that elementary lunch will be back indoors. And in fact, it will be back in the cafeteria. So it will be sort of a pre-pandemic routine for lunch. At the middle school, they are currently giving kids the choice about whether or not they eat indoors or outdoors. Most kids are choosing to eat indoors now. And, you know, we are willing to sort of leave the picnic tables out there for kids who want to continue to eat outdoors if they're more comfortable doing that. The high school, of course, resumed a typical lunch at the beginning of the year. Things are a little more flexible in terms of student choice at the high school. In addition, I want to mention that we're going to be making a change in our communication protocol. So as of next week, principals will no longer be sending letters out to their school community every time we have a positive COVID case. Instead, we will be updating the dashboard, our COVID dashboard that is on our website. We will be updating that every Wednesday, which is the day that we report out our data to DESE, so it makes sense to be on that timeline. And we will on Wednesdays email a link out to the listserv for people who are interested in checking out the dashboard. The data on the dashboard is broken down by school so that people can understand what's happening in their school community. And then lastly, I just want to say a word about pool testing. So our participation rates for pool testing have remained about where they've been for a while. Now, a few months in here, I can tell you that overall, since the beginning of the year, about 2.5% of our pools have been positive. And that, of course, it's a little higher now. So I would say every morning, we are dealing with a positive pool or two at some school. But in total, 2.5% of our pools have resulted in positives. And of course, that if it's a positive pool, it typically only means that one individual in the pool is positive. And so when we do the math, it's a little less than 0.5% of our tests that are coming back positive. So I do think that it is providing some degree of assurance for us right now. And I do think, you know, as we return in January with the numbers going up, where some variables are changing in terms of vaccination rates, we may be talking about masks, I know. I do think having the pool testing in place is a good mechanism and a good data point for us. I just want to kind of put out there what we're seeing, because I do think there will come a time when we may want to think about whether or not this is still the mitigation strategy. I'm wondering, this is just speculation, if at some point DESE will pivot away from the routine testing and go more in the direction of rapid testing for students who are symptomatic or something of that nature. So I think those are conversations that we will, you know, have to have going forward. So that is it for me for that topic. Stop sharing. See if there are any questions.
First of all, I'm very disappointed in the percentage of kids that have got one shot, 5 to 11, 48%, considering all these other towns. And I'm not sure if it would be appropriate to publicize this in our newspapers and to say, at least I'd like, as one school committee member, to say I'm very disappointed that we're so far behind other towns like us that have the same resources, and that all these unvaccinated kids are at risk. And I'm not sure if the parents understand this or see this. We're making a huge effort to vaccinate the kids. We describe what we've done, but I think it's important to get that word out to the Westwood community that we need to wake up, that we're way behind other communities. In my opinion, that's making the kids unsafe. It's something we could control. And I'd just like to get some publicity on that, see if we could write something up, get it in the newspapers, describe what we've done, Emily, which is wonderful to have this, we're doing the vaccinations. And just get publicity for what we're doing, because I just think it's a shame that we're so far behind other communities.
I know, Emily, at one point, the number of cases in Westwood was much higher than compared with other communities. Given that the middle school seems to have calmed down a little, is that still the case, or are we more in line?
So I have to say, I don't know. The weekly report from DESE comes out on Thursday evening, so I haven't seen it yet for this week. I think what you're referring to is last Thursday, they reported out, actually they reported 2 weeks at once because they sort of took a break for Thanksgiving. So the case counts represented 2 weeks last week, but yeah, our Westwood numbers were 50 students and 7 staff. And I took a look at sort of a similar comp list, and the closest district to us, in terms of cases, I think was Walpole at about 38. I mean, it was a big difference. And there were a number of communities that were, more like around 12 or 15. So it was different. As I said, in that 2-week period, we did have this strange surge in 6th grade. So I will take a look probably later tonight after this meeting to see what the number is for this week and see if we're more in line.
Okay, great. I think the other thing I just wanted to raise is I know that given the increase in the cases, there's been a lot more discussion in the community about contact tracing. And I think there's also a little bit of confusion about that. And I think just to make a few points about that, so we're very clear, if you are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you are vaccinated, you are not considered a close contact, correct? So
you may be a close contact, but you're exempt from any action
from
as a result of
quarantining.
that. So
yeah,
right.
So even if you are a close contact, you're exempt from quarantining
Or test and stay.
Or test and stay.
Nothing.
Right?
Yes,
you can just continue your life.
Correct.
If you are unvaccinated, but in the testing, in the pool testing that we offer, then you can, and it's a school exposure, right? It has to be a school exposure. Then you can participate in test and stay. But if it's a sports exposure or any other community exposure, that's out of our jurisdiction. That's the Board of Health, and that's up to the Board of Health to conduct that contact tracing. We will not be contact tracing for non-school exposures, correct?
That's correct. We do contact tracing for school-based exposures, and the test and stay program is only related to school-based exposures.
Okay.
And that has to do with the premise of the test and stay program is that if the exposure is in school, we have confidence, we know exactly what, it's a controlled environment, right? And so the risk of turning positive through the test and stay seems low. At least that's how it has been explained to us, why there is this distinction.
Okay. Okay. Because I think some parents have been confused as, they know that their child may have been a close contact. They're not getting called by the school and they're wondering why. And the answer is that it wasn't a school exposure. It was some other community exposure. And that's why we are not conducting the contact tracing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. Oh, I'm sorry, Maya, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just had a quick question. So obviously the vaccinated students, you mentioned, Emily, are exempt from the quarantine. Are we notifying them that they're close contact? Like, are they still being made aware so that family can, decide whatever they want to do? And then my other question is how lunch is handled. If it's like a vaccinated and unvaccinated, or even 2 vaccinated students, obviously eating close together without, they wouldn't.
Yeah. So again, if you're vaccinated, then that results in nothing. In terms of, yeah, if we're contacting people who are vaccinated who may have been exposed, no. So, I mean, I will be honest that it's just, we could not keep up with the volume. So the cases were coming in so quickly for a while that we had all we could do to sort of conduct the contact tracing before like 2 more had popped in, and so we had to prioritize identifying people who've been exposed and were unvaccinated and implementing the test and stay.
Thanks. That's just helpful to know. I obviously totally understand the capacity piece. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on COVID? I know we're going to talk about the mask policy later, right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right, then I'll just move on to a update about our director of facility search. So I want to say, as you know, Ken Aries, who is our wonderful director of operations, is retiring at the end of this month. And he's been with us for 13 years. This is going to be an enormous transition for the district to say goodbye to Ken. He has actually postponed his retirement twice. The first time was when we had a transition and Lemma was coming on board, and he thought, oh, he would stick around and help us through that transition. And that was in spring of 2019. And then, of course, we all know that a pandemic hit, and you know, this is the kind of person Ken is, right? He couldn't contemplate leaving us in the lurch in sort of this moment of change and crisis. So we were very lucky because at that time, as you recall, we had to call on our operations department to reconfigure all the classrooms and move all the furniture and do the ventilation upgrades and the cleaning, the disinfecting. So it was it would have been quite a time to leave. And we're glad that he didn't. You know, and beyond that, Ken is the guy that I speak to at 4:45 a.m. when there's a snowstorm, right? To sort of see if we still have power and what the condition of the buildings is. He's the guy who drives to a school in a moment's notice on the weekends when, you know, some pipe is burst. And of course, he oversees all of our capital projects and the operations department in the day-to-day cleaning and maintenance in the district. And I would say that, you know, Ken and his department are the people who are the ones behind the scenes who make Friday night football games happen, who make the graduation ceremony happen, right? All those wonderful events that we have, that's because these folks are hard at work. So he certainly deserves to retire, and we are happy for him, but it's going to be a big challenge to, you know, transfer all of his institutional knowledge. So with that said, though, we will be welcoming a new director of facilities this month. His name is Tom Carey. Tom is currently the director of facilities for the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, where he has been since 2004. During his time at the MFA, they completed the construction of the new American Wing. And during the interview process, he talked a lot about what an exciting time that was in his career and how excited he is by the idea of joining us as we begin our building project. A little about Tom, he has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering and also a BS in Facilities Management, and as well as an MBA. And so those credentials, I would say, combined with his significant experience managing facilities in an organization, which is similar to schools in that it's mission driven, it's a community resource, we think is really going to make him an excellent match for this position. So he'll be joining us on December 20th. He and Ken will overlap for a little bit. I want to thank Lemma, who led the search process, and also thank the school personnel who participated in the process, as well as our town partners, Chief Deckers from the fire department and Todd Corchin from the DPW, who also gave a really important perspective during the search process. So we will make sure that you get to meet Tom when he joins us. And I know that you will all be part of bidding farewell to Ken at some point. Any questions on that? Nope. Okay, great. All right, and then the FY23 budget development process. So we are deep into that at this point. Cost center leaders have submitted their requests. Central office has met individually with all of the principals, and we've started sort of putting it all together, looking at the big picture and discussing the priorities as a district K-12 pre-K to 12 team. I would say the good news is that from an enrollment perspective, we're in good shape in terms of staffing levels. So as you recall, in this year's budget, one of our goals was to provide sufficient staffing to keep our elementary class sizes small, and we committed to really keeping them within our guidelines. Almost all of our 70 elementary classrooms are within guidelines, and in fact, half of them at this point are actually below the guideline. We do anticipate, though, that our incoming enrollment will likely be higher than what we can actually see in the pipeline now. We know, for instance, that this past summer, our elementary enrollment ended up being about 40 students higher than we could see at the time that we developed the budget. So we have to plan for a similar situation next year. The enrollment at the middle school and the high school look fairly stable, though. So sort of on that side of things, things are pretty good. So I would say, and I think this really matches what we heard from the school committee last month in terms of your priorities, that the needs are largely in the realm of student services to address social, emotional, behavioral needs that we're seeing in students. So I'm going to foreshadow for you that we do believe that we will need to add additional counseling supports in the district, and that a top priority will be a recommendation to add a dean of students at the middle school. I am going to be honest that this budget process right now is one of the more difficult budget cycles that I can remember. And I mean, basically, we just have a long list of requests from the leaders in the district. And there are a lot of things that we're working on and trying to make progress on. And you know, honestly, none of the requests seemed unreasonable to me. There are times when people throw things in there and we think, that's probably unlikely, but this year they seem pretty reasonable. So we've already made some difficult choices, and I'll tell you, we still have quite a ways to go in terms of making some choices to get to a proposal that we think is like realistic and feasible, and what the community can support. So we will keep working on that and be back in January. And let me pause and see if there are any thoughts or questions on budget. Anything else should be thinking about?
I think that makes sense. I think that we, as a committee, have been emphasizing SEL, social emotional learning. We're really concerned about coming out of COVID and the impact that it's had on the kids. So I think, you know, as you say, the budget will reflect that. And I think that's certainly the direction that I was hoping to see the budget go in. I know it will certainly be a challenging year, but hopefully we can get through it. But anyway, we can pick that back up in January.
That'll be January's challenge, right? Okay. So I did just want to end the superintendent's report with some.
Hang on one second. Tony,
sorry.
did you have something on the budget?
One quick question. I know you always, I know it's not perfect, but oftentimes you get the census data from the town clerk. Do you have any sense is the kindergarten number compared to where it was a year ago a little high? I mean, the incoming kindergarten. Have we seen any trend? I'm just thinking post-COVID, people moving in the town. Have we seen any trend in that data that might anticipate?
So as I mentioned, we had a big jump this year. So I'll give you an example. We ended up with, I believe, 22 more kindergartners at Downey than we could see coming in, right? So we added that K1. That was a very dramatic change. No, I mean, as I look at the kindergarten numbers now, it looks similar to what it looked like last year. But, you know, I'm just wondering if there will be any kind of, you know, similar thing.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. And then just because, particularly as we talk about budget, it's good to remember what we're talking about and why. I thought I would share just a couple of things from the school. So I'm going to go through these lightning fast, but this is first graders at the Hanlon who are getting a nice introduction to coding. And this is a wonderful Hanlon citizen who you can see showed super kindness when he got a friend a cushion for snacks. So well done. We need more of that, I would say, right now. And this is also Hanlon first graders, I think, having kind of a movement break, doing a little yoga stretching there. We're moving over here to Downey, where you can see students with Ms. Goosen and Ms. Doyle, our elementary science specialists. They're out in the courtyard at Downey doing some science observation. These are the awesome teachers at the Martha Jones School at the end of a professional development training. So they're looking pretty good and happy here. These are our preschoolers who this week, I think this is today, based on the snow on the ground, right, walked down to the Council on Aging to deliver some cards and gift bags that they've made for senior citizens. And Lena's there. You can see on the right, the Council on Aging director to greet them as they arrive with their goodies. This is over at Sheehan. These are, I think, second graders who are working on a math lesson that had to do with symmetry and patterns. And so they're using the pattern blocks. This is some more of that. And also the Osmos, which is this little technology device that's attached to the iPads. And we want to thank the Sheehan PTA because they actually provided the funding for that. And then in our middle school, this is the 8th grade engineering class where the students were designing and building using some good power tools, hydraulic arms. More on that in 1 second. And at the high school, you can see we've got some students here working collaboratively to sort of dissect their thinking about an article and some things that had happened in the school in an English class. In the center here, this was a student-initiated event where they invited a speaker to come in to talk about the experience of Indigenous people and some things related to Indigenous People Week. The day before the Thanksgiving break, the high school had a big spirit day. So you can see some very spirited individual here peeking in the window. And of course, I needed to put this on display. We have our own Mr. Bomber, Mr. Kuklintz here. There was a canned food drive competition between Hanlon and Deerfield. And the deal was that the losing principal would put on a turkey suit and run around, but they're such good sports that they both did this the day before Thanksgiving. I do believe, oh, now I might get it wrong. I can't remember which school emerged victorious. Well,
Josh is holding a trophy.
Oh, that would be a very good context too. It looks like it's Deerfield, and he's kind of given us the okay, of course, and Mr. K looks like he thinks he was robbed. Okay.
Yep.
And of course, I want to congratulate our Westwood High School field hockey team, who are state champions. So we're seeing if we can get them into school committee to so that we can celebrate them in person. But that's a tremendous accomplishment. We're very proud of them. Performing arts, I'm going to put a plug in. You can see here the tweet from the WPS Performing Arts. We're back. So they have a bunch of winter concerts that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. Mark your calendars. And then I have a video for you. Remember those hydraulic arms? Here is one team as the class, basically they're about to sort of put their design on display, and we'll see what happens.
All right, let's go. All right. Radio and Ethan, they've created a robot that's taking over the world. Look at, can they get over the wall? Let's go. All right, round of applause. Wow. Woo.
So they seem pretty relieved that their hydraulic arm was a success. So congratulations to that team. And that's one very enthusiastic teacher as well. So thanks to him. Anyway, so that's it for me. Just wanted to share some of the great things that are happening in our schools.
That was great. Thanks, Emily. That's the best part of this, honestly, seeing that stuff that goes on in the schools.
Yeah.
It normalizes it, right?
Right, exactly.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're now going to move into public participation. As you know, this is the period where members of the public that wish to comment to the school committee can do so. You need to be on Zoom to do this. We will call on people who want to speak should be logged into the Zoom and should click the raise your hand button. And we will call on you in order. Each resident has 3 minutes to speak. We ask that you provide your name and your address before you speak. And we also ask that you direct all of your comments to the chair. So with that, we will jump right into it. I see Brendan Reeves in the queue with his hand up. So Paul, if you wouldn't mind unmuting Brendan.
All right, can you hear me?
We got you. Yep.
All right. Yes, my name is Brendan Reeves. I live at 62 Parker Street. The context, I'm part of a 4th grader at the Hanlon School and a 7th grader at the middle school. Quickly, I would just like to offer my support for the district's continued DE&I efforts. I've spoken with many of the school committee members privately about my support, and I just want to briefly take a moment to offer my support publicly. Tonight, I just would like to discuss the memo that was shared on November 29th regarding the proposed expansion of the METCO program in the elementary schools. The proposed expansion of the METCO program provides an excellent opportunity for our school district and for our community. You know, for over 5 decades, the METCO program has been working to appreciate diversity, to create shared experiences, to prepare young people to become global citizens, whether those young people are Westwood or Boston-based. So I think this expansion is especially important for the Boston-based students who participate in the program. Enables them to join at a much younger age rather than when entering middle school, a much tougher time to make such transitions. And so many important connections to the community and to classmates happen at a younger age when the expansion of the program will greatly improve the experience for those Boston-based and consequently the Westwood-based students. And I think despite the continued challenges posed by the pandemic and all of the other challenges that you know all so well that go into operating a school district, I do believe that this timing is right to expand, right? We're not creating, we're expanding the existing program through the significant increase in the funding mentioned in the memo from the state and the additional support staff that this will directly fund. Of course, class size is always a hot topic, so particularly at the elementary level, I think it's already come up in this meeting. So I appreciated that the memo addressed this topic, that class size will not, exceed district guidelines. It's important to remember that the goal and the outcome for over 5 decades of the METCO program is not to simply add students, but to add to the educational experience of all students. So I just wanted to offer my support quickly for that tonight, and thank you. That's all I had.
Great. Thank you, Brendan. Okay, next I see Juliana Belding. So if we could unmute Juliana.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
All right, I'm Juliana Belding at 19 Oriole Road. And I also wanted to speak in support of the METCO elementary expansion. Brendan made a lot of really, I think, important points. I just wanted to say that I believe that even though the timing may have appeared a little sudden, I feel like it's an exciting opportunity for us to strengthen the METCO program. My partner and I have 2 children at the Sheehan Elementary, and as I think about them making that transition to middle school, I think about all the connections they've made with peers and teachers in the smaller community of Sheehan, like our other elementaries as well, and I'm really thankful for that. So I believe that extending the METCO program to the elementary school will support our Boston-based Westwood students through their school journeys, and I really believe is very important. I also want to voice support for the equity audit that was mentioned in that memo as a way to help ensure that this program is as successful as possible as it begins. Thank you for your time and your work on this and all the other myriad of efforts.
Thank you, Juliana. I don't see anyone else in the queue with their hands up. Paul, is there anyone on the phone? Oh, I think we just got a hand. Patty, can we unmute Patty? Patty, you there? I think you need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, now we
Oh,
can.
good. Sorry. I just want to say, I teach at a...
Sorry. Do you mind just giving your name and your address?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I'm Patty. I live at 69 Hawthorne Street.
Okay.
I want to say I teach at a fairly prestigious independent school, and we certainly have, we try to diversify both through financial aid and certainly, like we're all doing, try to get some sort of racial diversity, socioeconomic, all sorts of diversity. And I'm a huge proponent of extending METCO into the elementary school. I have to say the younger that the children are introduced to one another, and my school starts in 5th grade. What I've noticed is by the time they're juniors and seniors, they have real conversations about race, about where did you come from, about where did you come from. And I think sometimes more powerful is the financial differences, certainly at my institution. So I applaud you. I think if the sooner that we can get, expand this program, the better. For all of our kids. And of course, there are going to be issues with class size, but I'm confident that we can overcome those. And the second thing I just want to say is, I've seen a ton of issues, mental health issues, things, occurring this year as a result of COVID. So again, I also support putting on extra staff, wherever it's being asked for, because we need it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Patty. Okay, I don't see anyone else. And I think the phone calls would show up here as well. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, that's where they would show up.
Yeah. So, all right, seeing no one else, I'm going to close public participation, and we are going to move into the school committee chair update and liaison reports. Chair's update, I don't have much to that, so I'm going to jump to the school building project update. We are in the sort of the final stages before we move into the contractor selection process. We did have an aesthetics and design subcommittee meeting today where we are looking to finalize the interior finishes and material selections. We gave some feedback, and we will have another one of those meetings in January prior to the next SBC meeting, where the subcommittee will make a formal recommendation to the SBC. At that time, we also hope to have back a cost estimate. I think we are submitting at 60% construction document cost estimate. So we should have that back, and we'll see how much we need to value engineer. And to be honest, I think we will have to do some value engineering given the current market, but we'll see where those numbers come out. And the sort of longer term schedule, we hope to really bring on a contractor sometime this spring. And again, we're still hoping to break ground in the middle of next summer, 2022, and we'll go from there. So that's where we are on the school building project, the Hanlon Deerfield project. Any questions? No, okay. So moving on to the COVID-19 advisory group update. Tony, do you have anything to add for that, or do you want to hold until we talk about masks? Or
no, we don't. I mean, we haven't really met in a few weeks, so nothing really to add there. And then on the other one, the start times, we did kick off, I believe, last week. So we've very excited to kick off, and we've got now a schedule over the coming months. So more to come.
Okay, great. Policy review subcommittee, Carol.
Yeah, we haven't had a meeting yet. We did get a nice package of lots of really, really good things to do. And yeah, so we have our work cut out for us, but Charlie and I are going to jump right in, right, Charlie?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Any other liaison reports anyone wants to add?
I'd like to just get the committee's advice on something that might possibly lead to a subcommittee. At the last meeting, we had some public comments from parents who had taken their kids out of the Westwood school system. And they seem to be fairly rational people. And I was concerned with that. And I was wondering, I personally would like to know more about why. What were the issues? To see if there's going to be more people doing this, and to see if it was just some issues that could be resolved. But I'm concerned. Think we should explore it, learn more about it, and have a discussion. If there are things there that are reasonable that we could learn from. But I do think, I personally feel I need to know a lot more about it. And so I'd just like the committee's advice on whether a subcommittee, a few people, some teachers, some administrators, school committee, just begin to talk to some of the families and what led to this, Are they interested in coming back? Just more concerned is at the beginning of something that we may be very concerned with. So I'd like the committee's advice on how you think we should pursue that, because I'm personally interested in finding out more about it that I just don't feel I know.
So Charlie, and maybe Emily would jump in here, probably has more knowledge on the subject, but this has been an ongoing, I mean, for years, there are always people who take their kids out of district for all kinds of reasons. I guess I would ask if, are the numbers exceedingly high right now that we would need to have a subcommittee on this, or is it just the typical? Because we have a lot of kids in Westwood that leave and go to private school for various reasons.
Yeah, I agree that happens, but I don't remember having been on the committee, 7 years, people coming to us and explaining it almost like they want to stay here, and they're in Westwood for the school system, and it's different than anything I've ever seen. And if you look at the environment we're living in today, where there's a lot of controversy out there anyway, and school committees around the country are having very, very serious problems, I just think it's different. A different time. And these are people who strike me as they love Westwood schools, and there's just something about that they don't like, that I think they're seeking out help and can we improve it? And I'm just saying, are these things that can be resolved and learn from this? Because I don't think these people are leaving and trying to insult us. They're leaving because they loved it here, but there were some things that they had problems with. I'm interested in finding out what that is, only because I don't know. Maybe everybody else has all the answers, but I think it's something that needs to be looked at. And I personally need to know a lot more about it, because it disturbed me, because these were very rational people and they love the school system in Westwood. They just found there were some problems. And I don't think they're the problems that we've had over the years.
So maybe, go ahead. Go ahead, Amanda. Yeah, well, maybe the next step, I mean, it'd be helpful to see the data. I know we don't need these, we'll talk about now. But, it looks like enrollment has actually been pretty stable, at least that it was last year. And I know if you look a lot of actually public school districts across the country did actually lose a lot of people during COVID. So it'd be helpful to actually look at the data if this is really, really anything a change, or is this just kind of the normal 11% or whatever the number is. I think it was 11% it used to be of private school citizens. Maybe that would be a good next step. What do you think?
I'm happy to do that. I mean, I have to say, I don't think that our numbers are different than usual. I would also add that whenever we have people who, reach out to us and say they have some concern about the educational program or the curriculum, I think we've consistently been open to having conversations with people. I know that, both Allison and I have invited people in to say, we'd like to understand your perspective and your concerns. So we certainly, are open to that. But Tony, I'd be happy to, take a look at that data.
Amanda, you had something to say?
I was just going to say, in listening to the public comments from people, it seemed somewhat straightforward to me in terms of why people were making the decision to pull their kids. I feel like the comments kind of supported, why they were making that choice. It seemed like a lot of it had to do with religion, and it would make sense that they would pursue a religious education for their child. So it seemed obvious to me, I guess is what I'm saying, in listening to the parents talk in terms of why they made that choice.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, maybe we'll get some data. We'll see if there is an abnormally high number. I do think, to Emily's point, Charlie, I do think that when a family comes to the district and says, we will be leaving, there is a conversation between the district and the family. And, I think there are, and as Carol mentioned, there's lots of reasons why people leave the district. We have had a couple families say that they are leaving in public participation, but I believe those, there have been conversations, I think, with some of those families. And so I'm not sure a subcommittee is warranted at this point. But let's get some data. Let's look at it. And to the extent, Charlie, you have questions, I'm sure you and Emily could have a conversation about that. But every time a family does actually pull their kids, there is a conversation between the district and the family.
I want to clarify, not every time. Sometimes people just
Sorry,
make their own
not every time.
choices, and we don't, inquire or require any explanation. But, when people do reach out to us saying that they have specific concerns, then of course we say we'd love to have a conversation about that.
Right.
I think
yes.
I just also want to mention, Maya, because it didn't come up in the chair's update, just that our first school committee office hours, I thought was
Oh, sorry. Yes.
constructive and and really great. And the next office hour is happening, I think, on
January
January
6th.
6th. Yeah.
Yes.
January 6th.
Sorry. Yes,
Yep.
Emily, good
Amanda
point.
and I will be there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's January 6th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. In the professional development room at the high school in the central office. Carol and Amanda will be there. And I should explain, this is really drop-in hours. You do not have to show up at 7 and stay until 8:30. You can actually come whenever is convenient for you. No need to make an appointment. They will be there from 7 to 8:30 talking to whoever shows up whenever they show up. It's very informal. The first one that we had in November was I thought really successful and very productive. I think that we had a great group, and we had some really interesting discussions, and I think we had some discussions on topics that we hadn't discussed before. And I think that was I know that I personally am frustrated a little bit with public participation just because of the lack of back and forth. And I felt that forum was really successful in that sense, that people asked questions and we were able to answer them to the best of our ability. And then other people would also share on the topic, other parents, other residents. So to the extent you have something that you have questions, you have something you want to say that you feel deserves more than just a public comment, I encourage everybody to go to this January 6th office hours. We were very pleased with the first one, so hopefully the second one will see a lot of people there as well. Sorry, I did forget to mention that. Thank you, Emily.
Well, thank you. I will follow up with Emily. I just, as we all get calls from people questioning things, and I've just felt very uncomfortable not having answers or not being informed. So I will follow up right now with Emily on what I'm looking to be informed better on. And thank you.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. Okay. Anything else on the liaison reports? All right, moving into the discussion items, the METCO program expansion. Emily, is that you and Allison, or Allison? That's you.
Actually, Allison and Latifa Frank, who is our
I don't see her.
director. Well, she is. I see her in the panel.
Oh, she's in the.
So she needs to be promoted.
Yeah, we need to promote her.
I'll take care of it.
Oh,
Thank you.
you.
And in the meantime, I'm going to screen share here. Hopefully this works.
Good evening, everyone.
And all right.
Welcome, Latifa. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank
Welcome
you
to
for
the
having
panel.
me.
We are going to tag team on this, Latifa and I, and I'm really excited to be talking about this. This is my 25th year in the Westwood Public Schools. Time has flown, and throughout the entirety of that time, the conversation has come up over and over again about METCO expansion. It's from parents, from students, from community members really interested in, is there a way we can pull this off? And we have this possible, opportunity here that kind of came up on us very quickly, and we're pretty excited about it. I do want to acknowledge that one of the things that I think has happened over the arc of the past few years, which just so happens to correspond with Latifa's tenure here in the district, is that our METCO program, which has always been an enormous benefit to the community and to the schools, has started to feel, I think, like a program that's not just a school program, but that's a broader community program. That it is sort of doing these things. And I want to give her a lot of credit for kind of forging partnerships and doing outreach and some things that are really highlighting the benefits that METCO brings, not just to the Westwood Public Schools, but to Westwood writ large. And so I'm going to hand it off to her to start, and we'll be back and forth on this. So she's going to do some talking about up front some of the things that METCO has done or that have happened under the METCO umbrella that both get at our kind of values and things we're pursuing in the Westwood Public Schools, but that do also really show kind of broader community impact as well.
Well, thank you. I want to thank all of you for having me here and having the ability to talk about the METCO program and the possibility of expansion. Is very exciting, as Allison said. And so, you know, as we think about the work that the METCO program is doing within the Westwood school community, it's centered around these three pillars that that are in our school visioning. Emily wrote about them in the memo to the school committee, but honoring diversity, pursuing equity, and promoting integration. And all of those align very nicely with the METCO program. And so, you know, the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years has been aligning and connecting these things. And so just to talk about a few of the things that have happened in the course of time since the last time I came to school committee and talked about the program. And so one of the things that we talked about previously is the revitalization of the LTARSE program. And so this is a student group that puts together, they talk about race, they talk about culture, ethnicity, and identity. And one of the exciting things that has happened over the course of the last couple of years is moving beyond the training of the students and giving them voice and experiences and time to go out into the community and talk with the larger the school community as well. So for example, here is a picture of the students at the high school in the library. I love this picture. I love when we do events in the library because of the, you know, W, and I think it's just so significant. But it's a program called LTARSE Presents Westwood High School Together series, and the students come up with it. They are eager and excited to do, you know, something every month. I will say that we have a really strong leadership team for the past 2 years with LTARSE, with our students, our presidents last year and this year as well. They're rocking and rolling, like they're really doing a great job leading the students into really pushing themselves to get out into the community. And so the series is around introducing Westwood high schoolers to different opportunities, different sets of knowledge. We've done a series centered around the Latin experience. We've also done a series around Indigenous people. And so they're planning and working and forging ahead on our next series. And so it's exciting to see them at work. Some of the other things that the group is doing and has done is, so in the spring, we had an all-school middle school event. And so we had a gentleman by the name of Anthony Valentine come and speak in person with our 8th graders. And the presentation was streamed live for our 6th and 7th graders back at Thurston. And then our LTARSE group of students planned and executed, they facilitated conversations about identity with middle school students, grades 6 through 8, in person, and it was phenomenal. I think oftentimes as adults, when we try to talk with middle schoolers about identity, it's tricky. So those of you who have middle schoolers or who have had middle school age children, you know that it's you know, it's an interesting age developmentally. And what's exciting about this group of high school students is that they have a set of skills because, you know, with the support of Caroline Higgins, we've trained them to have these conversations, but they're close in age to the middle schoolers. And so the middle schoolers will open up, they'll talk, they'll engage, they'll ask questions, they'll listen with a different ear than they do to adults. And so I think it's really important dialogue to have, and for it to be facilitated very well and in a safe way, so that students feel that they can be seen and heard. Some of the other things that we've done under the METCO umbrella is we've had what I've called the Westwood METCO Celebrates. And so, for our first event was our Martin Luther King event that we did back in 2020 2020, when we were all virtual, and it was a community-wide event. And then in June, in person, we were able to host our first Westwood Juneteenth celebration at Hale, and it was phenomenal and amazing, and just a different experience for the community. And in partnership with Hale, we've also, this year in the fall, we hosted our METCO program. We did a retreat. So we did a retreat with our middle school students, and we also did a retreat with our high school students. And Maya, you were talking about this earlier when you were making the connection between kind of the COVID impact and coming back into schools, and kind of the addressing some of the trauma and the social isolation. So our Boston students, they're unique. They are coming from Boston. However, Boston is a city, and they oftentimes don't interact with each other outside of school. And so we really took this as an opportunity to have students gather together. We took students through a protocol called the listening hour, where students talked with each other, and then they also did some ropes course work, and so had to trust each other and cheer each other on. And so it was just a very dynamic offering for the fall and the start of the year, so that we can build upon it. And, as Allison said, that, the METCO program is a mechanism for us to connect and tie the two communities together, Boston and Westwood, and to create opportunities and access for all of our students. A lot of times when I'm talking with students and families as well, we talk about the idea that we may not have racial diversity within our school and within our community, but we do have ethnic diversity, we have cultural diversity, there is some socioeconomic diversity, and so we need to surface that, to talk about that, to lean into that, to understand what that is and what that means. And then the other piece of the work that's happening is the curricular work, and really thinking about the curricular equity, and so having conversations with our humanities department. And so right now, the 6th through 12th grade humanities they're coming together and having conversations about, looking at curriculum, looking at the way teachers are instructing. And we're planning some professional development that, for a day where they may have done separate department time, but coming together to collaborate and to work on a shared goal of looking at our curriculum and looking at it for equity in particular. The other piece is, so we have had this great opportunity to bring back the calculus project into the Westwood community. And, although as the METCO director, I made the first contact working with the department head for mathematics at Thurston, we're opening it up to all students within our school community. And then realizing that we're having conversations about our mathematics program and how do we prepare students that are coming in 6th grade and 7th grade for rigorous instruction, and how do we support those students. And so, how do we get them to calculus by the the end of high school, but also how do we support them along the way? And so these are all things that are, we're talking about and having conversations and able to do because we have a METCO program here in the district.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in and talk a little bit about a couple kind of mechanical things. This is just a quick breakdown of the METCO structure. So METCO, as a program, is predominantly a K-12 program in most districts. Out of the 33 districts, 30 of those districts are K-12 programs. Westwood is just one of 3 districts that starts at the middle school. And, in terms of the question of why we haven't expanded in the past, it has a little bit to do with this kind of structure and funding mechanism. So structurally, the Department of Education provides oversight to the program, including oversight of the grant of the program. METCO Incorporated, that's the headquarters of METCO, is an organization that contracts with the state to do student intake. So they market the program, they get student applicants and families applying to the program, and then they also provide support for the districts. They run programming in Boston for families. They partner with us around professional development and kind of vision and support for our students. And then it's really the districts themselves that do the day-to-day program management. The way the funding works, however, is that allocations of the grant, which are on a per pupil basis, are based on a 3-year enrollment look back. So if you want to expand, you're sort of stuck because your grant is always based on your prior enrollment. And so to add seats, to add a bus, to add any staff, you would have to work within limited dollars and sort of shrink the bandwidth of what you can do to support the existing program. So that's the primary reason in the past we haven't been able to expand. And those buckets that I mentioned are really the major budget buckets. I'm going to say one other thing about funding and then turn it back to Latifa. One thing I've heard in the time I've been here is a concern raised about METCO funding, about the per pupil allocation in METCO, which is currently a little over $7,000, I think, is clearly nowhere near the spending amount that, say, the Westwood Public Schools contributes. If you take our budget and divide it up per pupil, it's much higher than 7,000. And I think it's really important to understand that METCO isn't designed the way the budget's designed. It's designed as a marginal program. So because we're not adding whole new classrooms and not hiring a whole other sort of raft of new teachers to support the program, what we're paying for are these sort of marginal costs. We're looking at things like transportation, some staff to offer some additional support, professional development, some materials and support programming, and honestly, that per pupil allocation, which I think advocates are always sort of working to increase, has done a nice job in helping us provide those things for the program. So I want to mention one other thing, which is sort of small in Westwood, but the grant isn't the full story. When we have students come in as participants in the METCO program from Boston, they bring with them their Chapter 70 allocation. So any new student enrollment, those kids are counted in our Chapter 70 formula, which is the formula that's used to determine the state's portion of our budget as well. I'm gonna leave it to Latifa to talk about brass tacks.
Yes. So our budget. So as Allison mentioned, the METCO program is funded by a grant issued through the governor's budget. So currently our budget for Westwood METCO is $341,000, and that is able to sustain transportation for students, and this includes some activity bus or late buses. We promote and encourage our students to participate in sports, after school activities, and so we're able to schedule our transportation to support some of that. I will say it's not all of it. those of you whose children do activities and things know that the intricacies of parent pickup is it's complex, and so we also help families, carpool and navigate that as well. It also supports salaries of our METCO staff, as well as professional development. And this professional development is done district-wide. So we're supporting professional development K through 12 already, and we'll continue that. And then the other piece is the community outreach and partnerships. And so we talked about all of the wonderful work that we're doing in order to make sure that our Boston students are able to access the Westwood community, as well as programming for the community at large and for the school community. And so that comes from the METCO budget. And then educational resources. And so as students are coming in from Boston Public Schools in middle school, we know that we do some supplemental support for them. And so that is in the form of having some of our teachers work with students. And so we're stipends, some tutoring from outside agencies, as well as materials. And so we want to make sure that there are no barriers for our students, and so that they're able to access all that Westwood Public Schools has to offer.
So I think I mentioned at the start, we've been having this conversation about expansion, or the topic of expansion has come up many times over the arc of my career here, and this opportunity kind of sprang up on us pretty quickly, but it was an opportunity that I think you have to look back a couple years to understand how it came to be. And Latifa, as a METCO director here, but also one in another district prior to coming to Westwood, has really worked with METCO Inc., with our kind of legislative champions on that process. So I'll turn it back to her to talk a little bit about that, and then kind of we'll wrap up the story.
Yeah. So over the last couple of years, the METCO grant has gotten increases in funding through the budget process with our legislators. And it has been primarily focused towards transportation and making sure that transportation costs were covered as much as they could be. And in the past couple years, the message from METCO Inc., as well as from our lobbyists, have been around supporting additional programming for the program. And the conversation led to expansion, and expansion in the way that we want to do it, whereas we want to add grades and really, shore up and round out our program, but also in the form of there's districts that have seats available and want to expand their numbers, that they're having success in their program and want to be able to invite more Boston students to participate. And then the last subset is that there are districts in surrounding communities that want a METCO program, that they see the benefits of, having Boston students come into their district. And they are eager and, knocking at METCO HQ's door and reaching out to their legislators to have a program. And so when the legislators went out this budget cycle, the narrative was really around expansion. And so while it seemed like it was out of the blue when the funding came in at a higher rate, and that there was in fact another increase through the governor's budget, it was earmarked for expansion. And so those districts like Westwood, who had reached out to DESE and who have had conversations ongoing and just, didn't have the budget to make it happen, were able to have money up front in order to front load and do some of the work to make it happen. And so this is how we got here today. And so, it happened really quickly, and it's a long time coming as well.
I do want to say part of what I think why this seems like it's come up really suddenly is in our conversations with the Department of Ed in the spring and in the early fall, they were very encouraging and asked for a preliminary proposal. And our understanding was that that was very preliminary, that, if they thought we were on track, we were going to have to engage in a much more robust grant process, because that's usually how they roll. There's often a whole raft of paperwork. And much to our surprise and delight, they got back to us and just said, hey, we're really excited that you're going to do this. You just need to get your school committee to approve, and then you're in. So here we are. That's if this is a sign that this is how DESE's going to do business from now on, I have to say that I, for one, am pretty excited.
And so what our thinking is around enrollment, if this happens. So for fall of 2022, we would look to enroll from 32 to 36 students in all grades K through 5. And so this kind of, works out to from about 4 to 6 students, depending on seats available. And then what we would do in subsequent years is look at, in focusing our enrollment, kindergarten through 2nd grade. And so that would be like our target grades. However, we still would have flexibility to enroll students at other grade levels, even though our focus and our target is kindergarten through 2nd. And so what that does is make sure that we are staying true to the idea of the marginal seats. And so we're adding students where space is available. And so, part of my role is to make sure that we're looking at, the enrollment and working with Emily and looking at that enrollment and then bringing in students where we have availability. And then, so anticipated budget. So this new budget includes our elementary students. And so we can see that there is an increase in funding, and there is an increase in operational cost. So with an elementary program, we would need to have an elementary bus. So that raises our transportation to include that additional bus. We would also want to make sure that we're supporting those elementary students with staff. And so looking at a bus monitor, a liaison for families, as well as an elementary coordinator. We would continue providing professional development and sponsoring professional development, as well as community outreach and partnerships. And then looking at making sure that we're still servicing students' needs and supporting them in different ways for elementary students, but in similar ways. So looking at their social emotional growth and skills, as well as their academic skills.
So the way that the state has proposed doing this expansion is actually taking a large chunk of the FY22 expanded grant money and giving it over to Westwood as if we had the additional students enrolling this year, with the idea that would be a planning and preparation grant to allow us to then enroll new students in the fall. I mean, it's a quick time turnaround and there would be a lot of work to do, but we actually think it's very doable and very exciting. And we've kind of sort of bulleted out the things that we would be using that funding for in order to make sure that we're doing everything we can so that, when a parent puts their kindergartner on the bus to head out to Westwood next year, that we are ready for that, and that the kids and parents and families are all reaping all the benefits of this program. First and foremost, we've been talking about an equity audit, and I want to say that expansion of the program isn't the reason for it. That's something we're planning to do anyway, but it is something that takes on an even greater importance under these circumstances. The audit is an opportunity for us to better understand the strengths and the challenges here in Westwood, the things that we're doing well and the things we need to work on. And I think, this is such an important program, and we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to pursue equity and promote integration, and really kind of honor kids for who they are. Additionally, the supplemental funds we would want to use to start to assemble that larger team. You know, Latifa mentioned some hiring, an elementary coordinator, a bus monitor, and liaison. We also want to think really carefully about the role of the director. You know, Latifa, in overseeing METCO, I mean, one of the things that's become clear to us is METCO is a program that fits under this larger umbrella, and the larger umbrella is really about promoting equity and integration within the Westwood Public Schools and within the wider community. That community partnership piece is important. So we're sort of imagining that this is sort of a bigger role that METCO is a piece of and a really integral part of. And then I'll hand it off to Latifa to kind of run through some of the other things that we're thinking about.
Yes, so Allison mentioned making sure that we are equipping our elementary school teachers for the first day when students are, you know, coming into their classrooms. And so professional development is key in that. And so we also understand that you know, teachers, the capacity of them to do some of this work in the winter and spring is limited. And so we're really thinking about framing the work of the professional development as a summer institute and looking at curriculum closely, as well as school culture. And I think this is a really important piece. If we're welcoming a set of students and families into our school, that we want to make sure that the school culture that we have is one that, you know, we realize this is the school culture and that we're able to articulate it and onboard children and families into it. And then the other piece is building the capacity within the district at large. And so we've started to talk with teachers who are very interested in this work, becoming skilled in this work, and furthering that's and building on that skill set. And so having equity leaders throughout the district, so elementary K through 12. And so providing them with training, also providing them with a mechanism to collaborate amongst each other and to have a touch point with the expanded role of the director, so that the communication is seamless and that we're supporting the district goals, supporting the goals of the METCO program, and also making sure that we're bringing everyone along with us as we go. And then equally as important, I see it, is the onboarding of families. And that's Boston families as well as our Westwood community families as well. And so partnering with our existing PTOs, site council, as well as our welcome club, which is, so Westwood, we don't have a friends and family or host family program. What we have is a welcome club. And it's a phenomenal group of PTO parents out of Thurston Middle School, and so replicating that at the middle school level, and then also bringing it into the high school as well, so that we are making sure that all families feel supported and have touch points within the district and the community to ask questions and to engage with. The other piece is the program space. And so figuring out, you know, where we will house our elementary program, where the coordinator will be, and what that space, you know, visioning for that space and what it looks like. We know that we have to gather materials. And then the other two pieces, so thinking about the vision of the program and kind of forward thinking, and, you know, transportation, as you've seen, transportation is a huge part of the grant and the cost of the program. And so as we think about expanding the program and also expanding the opportunities and access to students through the program, alternative transportation. And so we think that, you know, having a van that's dedicated to the METCO program or the METCO department would be essential. And, you know, like some of the things that we've thought about is if we have our high school students who want to work in our after school program, or if we have students that we need to maneuver, you know, throughout the district or back and forth into Boston. And so, you know, the cost of having an additional bus are astronomical. And so the idea of if we're able to secure a van, that would take alleviate some of that. And so if we have some money up front, we can do that. Then the last piece is the onboarding of students. And so we really think that it's important to have a robust summer program for students coming into our elementary schools. And so, and that being a program that focuses on academics, but not just academics, but the social piece of Westwood in Westwood Public Schools community, as well as the emotional piece. And so for us in the district to have an opportunity to get to know our Boston students as they come in the summer, and so that when they come through those doors at the start of the school year, we're ready for them and they can hit the ground running.
You know, one thing I think we neglected to talk about, I think in the memo around this is expansion of the program also, I think, is going to give us an opportunity to diversify our staff here in Westwood. And I think I've spoken about this before, but you know, our Westwood is an increasingly diverse community in terms of our student population. That's a trend we believe is going to continue, and our staff, you know, I think we're working on that and we're making some inroads, but we have a ways to go. I do really think that when we have a more diverse student population, that's a draw. That's an attractive thing for staff, you know, staff of color, educators of color who are looking to work with students and support students kind of based on their own experience. And so I think that's a critical piece for us. You know, additionally, I think that is a situation where everyone benefits. You know, when we can diversify staff, we get folks with different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives and insights. It really strengthens our team here, and we can just do better work on behalf of all of Westwood's students. So that's one additional plug about this that I think we're excited about, that I wanted to make sure to highlight.
And then, you know, just in closing, to reiterate that this is a great opportunity for our Boston students coming in, but also to our elementary Westwood resident students as well. And, you know, it's an opportunity for students to be immersed in Westwood Public Schools community and culture, and for our Boston students and families to have a part in developing it, developing the culture of our school community at the onset. And so it's really exciting. One of the things that was in the memo that I just want to highlight and point out was the sentence around Westwood's membership as a METCO district reflects the community's belief that the way that students think about race and each other is positively changed when we learn with each other, and that education is improved when we don't learn in isolation. And, you know, we have a quote from Millie Abahe Thomas, who is the METCO Inc. HQ CEO and president. And so, you know, it's along those same lines, the importance of creating authentic relationships and opportunities for greater understanding at an early age. We all can agree is vital and very important. And so, you know, we hope that we are able to do this come fall of 2022. And so it's just a very exciting time. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk about the METCO program and the possibility of expansion.
Thank you, Latifa. Thank you, Allison. I think this was a great presentation, and one that was probably honestly long overdue. I think that we it was great to hear about the METCO program generally, particularly in the context of expanding it. I don't know if other school committee members have thoughts they want to share. I thought that was fabulous.
I agree. I thought it was so well done. Thank you both. And I'm just so excited, obviously, by the prospect of expanding the program, but all the work that's already gone into getting it off the ground and setting, the students and the programs and the families up for success, and all that, the foundation that's been laid, I think is phenomenal. So thank you so much for all of that hard work.
Thanks. It was a great presentation. I have a couple questions. First, both budget questions. First question is around where this, so if it's going to be marginal seats, does that imply it's going to be at multiple elementary schools?
Well, I can answer that, Allison. So no, we imagine that what we'll do is we'll bring the initial cohort into one elementary school. I mean, we think it's actually really important to create sort of a critical mass on a cohort of kids. And so the good news is this funding actually is really coming at a great time in terms of our class sizes. And this is actually related to the consolidation conversations that we're having around the building project. So we have two small elementary schools right now, Deerfield and Hanlon, both of which currently have very small class sizes. And we think the new school is where we would want the program to be going forward. So what we're thinking right now is that it probably would be at Hanlon. We actually think that's geographically a good place in terms of the bus. And we could bring in the numbers of kids that we're talking about now in a way that still keeps class sizes within, if not below, our class size guidelines. There may be one grade that's a little bit bigger, but we would just sort of strategically place them.
Thank you. I guess, so, but let me just kind of fast forward. I guess two more budget questions. In theory, though, going forward, if you did that, you could be in a place where you had theoretically kindergarten, where we want to bring in 5 kids in kindergarten, and we already have 21 or 22 in each of those classes. I just am playing out. In theory, it could push it all. I mean, I'm just saying in theory. Is that fair?
Yeah. And so what we're thinking is, I mean, yes, bringing the new cohort in each year in kindergarten makes sense, but we are sort of saying K-2 for just that reason, right? So we might not be able to bring in a cohort of kindergartners in a given year.
All right, that's fair. And the other question is around SPED. So is there any state backstop? So, in the extreme, right? I mean, we all know if you had an out-of-district placement for anybody, it could be expensive. Is there any kind of backstop or, how does that get handled?
There is. So the way that the METCO program works is that if we had a Boston student whose IEP called for services that we were not able to provide in district, then they revert back to Boston.
Great. All right, great. Well, thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
So, hi, can you guys hear me? I'm having connectivity issues.
We gotcha.
Yes, thank you also, Latifa and Allison, for that presentation. And I've watched over the years. This is a long time coming, so I agree with the rest of the school committee. This is, it's about time. So so if we, I understand the reasoning for the kids coming from Boston, the elementary school kids all being in one school, but how, I mean, I guess, do we foresee even more expansion to get to our elementary schools, other elementary schools as well? I mean, it appears that there'll just be one school that will benefit from this, this program. How do we get our other elementary school kids to benefit as well?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I do think that Latifa made some important points about the way that sort of the reach of the METCO program expands beyond just the classroom, right? And it is really kind of integrated into the Westwood community. It is true that right now we're thinking about bringing in students in one school, and that will be eventually the consolidated school. And who knows, maybe in the future we would talk about expanding in the way that Latifa said other districts are looking to expand, which is to say more seats, right? But there is like an interesting calculation to be made, given that it's a per pupil expenditure, and you have to think about the costs, right? So sort of what we can afford right now, given the parameters of the grant funding, I think, is to do it in this in this way. I don't know, Latifa, if you have other thoughts about that.
I do. I think that the expansion into the elementary school, it opens us up for a possibility to have students in all of our elementary schools. The caution that I would have is that, and I think Emily started to touch upon it, is that if we're looking at the numbers, class sizes in some of the other elementary schools, that we wouldn't want to create a system where we have 1 or 2 students from Boston in a particular elementary school by themselves, right? Like, and so we want to make sure that we're able to have a nice cohort of students that are going to each of the elementary schools, and that we're being mindful and forward thinking about the projection of enrollment so that we can stay within the class size guidelines in order to maintain that cohort. So, but I think, you know, like in thinking about our bus, like where transportation is the most costly piece of this puzzle, we will have an elementary school bus that we will have seats on the bus for, and so, you know, we could put more students on the bus and then get them to schools if we had the ability to have a cohort and you know, stay within our guidelines for class size.
Could I throw one other thing out? I think one of the things I recall from way back, it seems like a long time ago when we went through the hiring process with Latifa coming from Lincoln, which is has a robust elementary program, is that you know, that those community partnerships make a difference. And so, you know, when we are getting kids here starting in kindergarten in the elementary schools, so there's students who may participate in a lot of different things in town that are across school boundaries, you know, and I think there's a lot of opportunities there, and we'd want to really engage the community with finding ways to support that, so that, you know, school is just one place where kids interact. We want it to be broader than that if possible.
I like the way you're thinking though, Carol.
I just
Can
wanted to
I
thank him.
Whoops, sorry. I had
I'm
just
sorry.
one more follow-up, if you don't mind. The elementary coordinator. So we're talking about one elementary school. What can you talk to me about what exactly the role of the elementary coordinator would be?
Yeah. So currently we have a position at the middle school and the high school as well. And so the coordinator is a touch point for students as well as families within the building. And they're also a support for teachers. And so we're thinking that the coordinator would also help with professional development, would, you know, help teachers with interfacing and contacting, communicating with families, and also help with the support and coordination of students' daily transportation, you know, things that may happen and transpire as they're coming off the bus or getting on the bus. Those types of things. So it's like the daily coordination of the students within the building.
I just wanted to thank Latifa, Emily, and Allison for not only staying on this topic, which has been brought up many years, but to grab this opportunity. You know, I think that this was a unique opportunity, and you moved on it quickly. And if you hadn't have done that, we never would have done this. So thanks for that movement and willing to do it and to get involved. I think it's amazing all the things you've thought through in the welcoming of families, the welcoming of students, the work at Hale. I think that's fantastic. And in preparing before the summer. I also would like to point out that Westwood did a town plan about a year ago. And I was at a number of the meetings, and it was a very sensitive subject that came up, that we're not really a diversified town. You know, there's a reason for that. Not that we don't want to reach out, but there's a lot of people in the town that would love to participate and support the program, you know, beyond what you have now. And that plan and the people involved in it, if the town was let to know about what's going on here, and we're looking for support, there's an awful lot of help out there, I think, that's ready and willing to step in. But they really made that clear. I also think the I'm very proud of our former school committee members, Josepha Jowdy, who at the last METCO graduation a couple of years ago was given an award for being the home, the college dorm for the METCO kids who had to stay overnight in town, because they're here for play. So I think there's a lot of Ed volunteer work, volunteer to drive kids back home, car drives with the Westwood participants. All that is an opportunity of this, I think, untouched group of people who like to cooperate. Just one idea for you in the future for your lectures is to bring back METCO alumni who went through the Westwood system and to share with the students coming in who are new. Just be patient. These people can be nice. And how it helped them, what it made a difference it made. And at the METCO graduation 2 years ago, there was a gentleman giving his daughter her Westwood graduation, who was a METCO student in Westwood himself. And it was just, everybody kind of looked at him as a wonderful example. So I think those would be wonderful speakers to inspire the kids, because they've been through it, what they liked, what they didn't like, what changed. But thanks for the work you've done to make this go.
Thank you. And Charlie, you'll be happy to know that we did enlist some recent graduates into our middle school retreat. And so they were able to talk about their experience. They were graduates of the class of 2020. And so they taught just what you said, like persevere, you can do it, stay determined, make connections with teachers and build friendships. And so, yes, we are doing that. It's wonderful.
Great. Anyone else have any comments? Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you again, Latifah and Allison. We're very excited to move this forward. I think we will vote on that on the action items. So more to come tonight. All right, moving on to the first reading of the acceptance of international exchange student policy. You've all got that in your packet. Does anyone have any comments to that? I have one comment. In the policy where we're talking about the requirements for the host, for the program or agency that places the international students, we have 2 bullet points, A and B. And in A, we say provide logistical support in placing the student. I just suggest we clarify saying placing the student with a host family for the duration of the enrollment period. It just says placing the student. I'm just not sure it's clear enough as to where we're placing the student, whether we're talking about the school placement or the home placement. And I assume we're talking about the home placement.
We are, yes.
Yeah. So we just might want to clarify that. And then just a sort of a question, like a process question. I know we have had international exchange students before, and I think we might even currently have some. And in B, when we talk about providing a point person during the school year who acts as a liaison between the school, do we as the school do any kind of, checking up on the host family throughout the year? Or do we just kind of leave that to the organization and just kind of, we don't do that for regular, right. I don't know if we do anything about that.
I not to my knowledge. So I can go back and check, but no, I don't think we do, other than we engage with the host family often the way that we would parents.
Right. Yeah. And with the student, clearly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's the only comment I had. So I think if no one else has any other comments, all right, we can move on from that. Next on the discussion is the review of the anti-bullying plan. Again, this was in your packets. Does anyone have?
I'm going to see if Abby wants to just explain the context for this. This is just a periodic review.
Yep.
Correct.
It is. It's our every 2-year reauthorization of the bullying prevention and intervention plan, which is its real name. We call it the anti-bullying plan in the office, and it made me smile that that's how it ended up on your agenda. But I wanted to say that the key idea there is prevention, clearly. So we want to underscore that. You do this every 2 years. Take a look at it. The edits that you can see are for accuracy and clarity. which is what we do. And I would tell you that the bullying plan as it is in front of you is compliant with the requirements from DESE. And we seek public input and comment. So we'd love to get public input and comment from this process. And we've already kicked off that process and had this in front of community organizations such as the CPAC, and we'll continue to push it through our social media and get some input from the community, because that's actually very important for this particular topic.
Great, thank you for that. With that, does any, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've so two things. One, a comment on the third paragraph on the first page. There's a list of different kind of things that can lead to bullying. The two edits I'd suggest on the third line, I would say including but not limited to, and then it starts going on with a bunch of things.
Yeah.
And then I would add, can we add family status as well? I didn't see that in there. And then I just want to understand then what you just said, Abby, about the comment, because if I'm reading this policy, we write on the second page, we have to have a formal public comment at a school committee meeting. So that's fine. We just need to make sure we don't miss out on that if that's a need.
It's correct. So that's why you have it here in December. So it could sit for
Okay.
the month, and you could vote it in if you chose in January.
I guess we just need to have it on the agenda, similar to we do to the budget. I think we probably have to have a formal opportunity, I would think.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
reading
get
it
that
right.
on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, any other comments? The only thing I noticed is this doesn't have page numbers. I don't know if that's intentional. Maybe it's part of the
finalized. Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
Good
Okay.
lawyer.
I know. It's the details, Tony. All right, moving on to the 2022 to 2023 school calendar. Again, that was in your agenda. Emily, is there anything you wanted to highlight on here?
I don't know that I would specifically. It's a fairly standard calendar. I would say that you may have noted that as June 19th is now Juneteenth, the state holiday, that has been incorporated into this calendar. And at this stage, we never typically have the early release days designated, but I just wanted to put out a suggestion, and I would suggest that when it comes time to do that, that the week leading into the December break, instead of running into the situation we ran into this year where we're having an early release day that Wednesday, we would actually suggest moving the early release to the Friday, the 23rd, and making that a half day instead of the Wednesday. We could get in a full day on Wednesday and then do a half day leading into the break. That's a little different than what we've done before, but I kind of think it makes sense.
I think it's brilliant.
All right.
I think everybody will appreciate that.
That's what I was thinking, right? So that would be my suggestion. But other than that, I think it's pretty straightforward.
So we have Juneteenth is the 19th, and our last day is the
20th.
Yeah, it doesn't come out great. And then the last day for teachers would be the 21st. And of course, if we have a snow day, it just bumps. And so we did sort of say, is there any way that we could get it
back to the 16th?
Back to the 16th. I mean, we didn't see a way to do that immediately. And we realized that if we did, and then we had a snow day, then we're right back where we started. So it was just a new wrinkle on the calendar.
I guess it's more of a question. This would in theory be something the June 19th isn't part of collective bargaining. I mean, it'd be something we could talk about with the WTO to see what their membership, or I mean, I don't know why that, I mean, in theory, in some ways, the kids, if you could actually do something education on that day, it may be more valuable than having a holiday. I just didn't know if the WTO would they be amenable to work that day or not?
Question. I don't know. I mean, it is a state holiday, so
okay.
I'm not
So
sure
maybe
that we
no
have
choice.
that option. But
okay.
But I can look into that question. Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's just going to delay, obviously. It's including the teachers, right? So
right. Yeah. So really, this month we usually put the calendar out for comment for a month. So I think that's all we're looking to do tonight, right?
Yep. Yeah, we will
Okay.
vote on that next month. All right. Any other questions on the calendar? Okay. Moving on to the first reading of the revised policy of face masks. As you'll see in your packet, we revised the policy to address the exemption, the 80% exemption, vaccinated, the DESE exemption, that if your school achieves 80% or more vaccination rate, then vaccinated students and staff, masks would be optional. So it now includes that. So I guess I'm going to open this up for discussion on that, because it is up to the school committee whether we want to implement this new policy, when we want to implement the new policy. We have the exemption in hand for the high school. I think at last count, the middle school and the elementary schools clearly did not meet the 80% threshold. I think we would likely look at that again post holiday, post winter break. But so the question, I think, is really, when do we want to enact this change to the policy? And if so, when do we want to enact it?
Yes, we do.
Yes, we do. I would agree with that. So I think a lot of people are looking to understand when we would enact this policy.
I would feel most comfortable with shooting for January 16th with the option to revisit on our next meeting on January 9th. It seems like a lot has changed in like the public health landscape since we last spoke about this. And there's still a lot of unknowns. And I think, the timing is really challenging with the new variant coming down the pike, and with the protection offered by the vaccination waning for students. It's been like about 6 months, right? So I'm hesitant to, jump into it kind of guns blazing right now. I'd like to allow ourselves a couple more weeks to see kind of how everything plays out before committing to it. So I'd like to still shoot for the 16th, but revisit at our next meeting.
So just looking at the calendar, I think the 15th date was DESE's date for, it had its mask mandate in place. It said until at least January 15th, accounting for the 2 weeks after the holiday. Looking at the calendar, so that would mean masks would begin to be optional for vaccinated students at the high school as of January 18th, which is a Tuesday. The Monday is the holiday, as Martin Luther King Day. So it would be January 18th. What do people think of that?
I don't believe in setting dates until we have information, and the information's changing every couple of weeks. So to say we're going to make a decision on a date, we don't know what the date is going to look like in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think just simply at our next school committee meeting, we reconsider it. I think we all want to get rid of the masks, but I don't think we set a date for when we're going to do it. We're going to set when we feel comfortable with the data that's there, that everyone's comfortable saying this is now safe.
So I would say that sorry, Charlie, I think we should have a date. And I think that if things do change, we reserve the right to, to make changes as needed. But I think it'd be nice to give everyone a date to look toward. Perhaps people will do the right thing over the coming weeks during vacation and all, to ensure that our numbers don't go up. Maybe more people get vaccinated. Maybe people will be careful over.
Oh, I think Carol froze. Okay, Tony, well, we're waiting for Carol to unfreeze.
Yeah, so I'm okay with what Amanda suggested as a general principle to whatever it was, the middle of January. I think especially given we are actually unfortunately almost at record levels again. I'm okay with that. And then, and we can always talk about it again in January. So I'm okay with that general principle. And then I guess I have one other question more actually on the visitors piece. and how, if we do implement this, if we have sports teams that are like competing at Westwood High School, they in theory would be visitors. Is there?
Yeah, well, so the language here mirrors the DESI policy
Okay.
around the exemption, and so that's what we
Okay.
did.
Okay.
And who knows what will happen with that? And then I would also say that at the moment, the MIA policy is that athletes competing indoors have to wear masks.
Okay.
So we'll see where we are with that in
Okay.
January as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I guess I didn't. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does seem a little strange that you, in theory, then we'd have a school committee meeting and you wouldn't have to wear a mask. And just this, I'm just taking this out. It's not about a school committee meeting, but it's fine. I think we'll see how the DESI guidance goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
We got you back.
Can
Yeah, you
now.
froze there, Carol.
Well, I have a terrible connection up here, and I was chatting. Can you guys still hear me? Because I was
Yes.
talking away. Nobody heard anything. I had a.
We heard you say a
That-
date. You're in favor of a date.
People doing the right thing.
People doing the right thing, right?
Okay, that's probably all I needed to say. I'm just gonna.
All right. So I think that I agree that we should enact, I mean, this is only a first reading. So, I mean, I think in accordance with our guidelines, we actually can't vote on it today because we do, I don't know, unless we can waive a second and third reading in one setting. Can we do that?
No, so we got this on the agenda because you would need to then have a second
Right.
meeting, be that your scheduled January meeting or some other time.
Right. And that's January 13. I think a lot of people have been looking at Hopkinton and seeing what happened there. And we do have some data from there. It looks like they did have a good trial, 3-week trial period with their masks off. I don't think they saw a significant increase in cases. Is that right, Emily? Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's my understanding, that they feel that it was successful. They feel good about that. I did communicate with their superintendent today, and she did tell me that they are remasking right after the December break for, some period of time, just to kind of account for the post-holiday. People have been gathering, but I think that the intention is to be temporary.
Right. And that sort of falls in line with the timeline Amanda suggested of a 2-week period. So I think I agree that I think we need to give parents some guidance around this and some clarity around this. So I agree with Carol on that. And I think personally that January 18th to me sounds right for the high school. I think we should start looking at the middle school numbers at the beginning of January just to see where we are. I also think at that, I wouldn't say today that all of the 5 to 11-year-olds who wanted to get vaccinated will have been vaccinated. As you pointed out, Emily, the ones we did in our own clinic aren't fully vaccinated for another 2 weeks. So I don't think that, but I do think that by the end of the winter break, everybody will have been vaccinated fully, who wanted to have been and who had the opportunity to be. And as I said, that's always been really important to me. So I think I would agree with that. That's sort of where I'm thinking. January 18th, we have the exemption for the high school. We'll start looking at the middle school at the beginning of January. And at our January 13th, we can review this policy again. We'll have more data and we'll go from there. How does that sound? Good?
Thank you.
All right. Are there any comments to the actual language to the policy? No. Okay. Moving into the action items. So the first action item is the approval of the METCO program expansion. Can I get a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve the expansion.
Second.
Okay, roll call. Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Carol. Where'd Carol go?
She's frozen, I think, again.
Okay. Amanda.
Yes.
And I am a yes. And so the motion is carried. Approval of rates for tuition-based programs. We didn't talk about this in discussion items, so let's talk about this now. I know Amanda and Tony, you guys were on the subcommittee for this. do you, or Emily, I don't know who wants to sort of hit the highlights of these.
Well, so I would say that I think it was 2 meetings ago that Lemma kind of provided the overall context and the framework. And so really, it wasn't a subcommittee, it was a working group.
Sorry, working
Yep,
group.
and Amanda, Tony, Lemma, and I met a couple of times to sort of dig into the numbers even further. And so the proposals that are in your packet are basically what we are putting forward as a recommendation. And, Tony and Amanda, correct me if I'm right, that's not an accurate
Correct.
portrayal.
No, and I'd like to thank Lem and her team for some great work. I think on these two, it's pretty straightforward, and it's kind of a multi-year approach. So I don't think for the Prodigy or for the building use, we'll have to revisit hopefully for this next several years. And we did ask that I think there's going to be some communication, particularly on the building use, to some key constituents so they can prepare in their budgets. We're not voting on extended day. I think extended day, we have a solution at least for this year. I think extended day is going to be one we'll probably have to keep on working on in the coming years as well. But I think we have at least a path forward on that for next fiscal year.
Yeah. So just to be clear, these are rates for the Prodigy program. This motion and this vote in particular is for the Prodigy program and for extended day. And sorry, yeah, it is. No, this
the first item is only tuition-based programs. Yeah. So you're seeing the first page there is the Prodigy program tuition. So it's a 3-year tuition proposal. So FY23, 24, and 25 is captured in those numbers. And it's only for this tuition that students would pay for a 30-minute, 45-minute, or 60-minute lesson in the Prodigy program. So that's the proposal there. For extended day, it is a 1-year tuition proposal. So just for this coming school year, otherwise FY23 as a fiscal year. And that is it's a 2-page document because we have after school and before school rates. So I just kind of captured them here. To be honest, Prodigy also has some other types of lessons that they offered. And what we would propose there is that we prorate based on what you see here as a fee structure. So for 30-minute and 45-minute extended day, you kind of see in this document the full fleshed out like universe of fees or rates that might be charged. So that's why that one is a 2-pager. And in the extended day part of this proposal, you'll see a cleaning up of the current pay scale. This is something we're also proposing in here just because the current scale is structured with multiple lanes that we don't find really is matched to the program. So this isn't a change in pay for current staff, but it's kind of putting them on one uniform lane. And we think it streamlines hiring for the current year in a year where we're having challenges with some hiring. So we think it'll be easier to communicate this, this as a place where our rates are as we're pushing forward and trying to promote the program and get people to accept positions there. So that's that. It's not really a change in pay, but a cleanup of the scale. And then the last element here is the preschool tuition for FY23. And I can speak to that as well a little bit, but are there any questions on extended day before I go to preschool?
Yeah, I just want to clarify what we're voting on in this particular vote, right? So in this vote, we're voting on 3 tuitions. We're voting on the Prodigy program tuition, we're voting on extended day, and we're voting on the preschool. Yes. And Lemma, you've already touched on the Prodigy and you've touched on extended day. So if you just want to talk a couple words about the integrated preschool.
The integrated preschool proposal here, this doesn't make any, we looked at the preschool tuition basically, and we understood from our analysis of it that there really isn't a budget reason to increase tuition here. However, over time, the annual tuition that families were paying, when we looked at it on an hourly basis, just wasn't equitably set from an hourly perspective. And we do need that to be kind of a straightforward hourly rate that's similar across the different classrooms, because the service that families are getting is really similar regardless of which classroom you're assigned to. And because our auditors will find it much easier to audit our books if we have this much more simple like fee structure for our tuition. So the proposal here for FY23 is to adjust the annual tuition so that we have a standard hourly rate across all of the classrooms. For one of the classrooms, that does mean it's a bump up, and it's a more significant bump up. The others had like either zero change or a very minor change. And again, because our objective was not to raise rates overall, but just to remedy like an issue in the structure of the tuition, the way that we charge it now, that we don't think really represents any meaningful difference in the experience that the students have. So that's that.
I'm actually going to jump in one other thought though on preschool. You know, the preschool tuition allows us to provide an offset to the operating budget. The preschool tuition in no way covers the cost of the program. So I just want to be clear about that. And as we are in the budget development for FY23, we are going to be, I believe, proposing an increase to the offset from the preschool program, which I think is important in terms of allowing us to do some other things that we want to do. So, you know, while we're not in dire straits in terms of the preschool tuition, it does not cover the cost of the program. And I think there may be some misunderstanding about that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'd say even looking at the direct staffing costs that are associated with these classrooms, the tuition that we bring in covers like less than a quarter of the staffing costs. So it does make a dent, but it's not a very significant piece of the cost.
Right.
And the offset's going up because we're expanding the program?
Well, I mean, the offset is a number that we choose to offset the program. I guess my point is that whatever the offset is that we have in the operating budget doesn't come close to covering the cost of the program, but raising the offset is one mechanism we have to, you know, to balance our overall budget.
Got it. Okay, thanks. Are we still expanding? I know last year we talked about expanding the program. Is that on the docket for this next year or no?
It's not on the docket for next year. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anything else on the proposed tuition increases? Or sorry, some are increases, some are not, but on this proposed tuition schedule. Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
I moved.
Second.
Okay, Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Carol, I know she's having connected. Carol, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, gotcha. Amanda.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, motion is carried. Okay, now we're moving to building use rates. So this is the proposed rates for FY 2023. Correct?
Yes. I can speak to this a little bit, and Emily and others, please chime in. So we are providing here like a 2-page document that gives you both the FY22 current rates for building use and proposed FY23, 24, and 25. So that's a 3-year look at future rates.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And yeah, you'll see them on those 2 pages. There are currently, the way we operate these and apply these rates, there are tiers. So just as a reminder, we discussed this a while ago in a different school committee meeting, but at the bottom, you'll see the definitions of the tiers. So tier 1 are school events, town meetings and elections, Westwood Rec Department, PTO. They're typically at no charge. Tier 2 are some sports leagues, scouts, nonprofit events benefiting or attended primarily by Westwood residents. Tier 3 are other nonprofit events or private Westwood resident use. And tier 4, for-profit organizations. So that's the way it's structured. We haven't historically differentiated between tier 3 and tier 4, and we're proposing to do that starting in FY23. It's not that there are many groups that will be critical to differentiate between, but it's kind of preparing us for if there are any future increases in demand, at least so we have a structure that captures what we would charge the different groups. So that's why you see tiers around here. And basically the fees escalate as you move from tier 1 to tier 4, with tier 1 being basically free and tier 4 being the higher cost. Some of the other changes here are like representing the fact that we might charge a banquet fee if there's a big event with several hundred people occupying cafeteria, and that this just impacts our building. So we had a lot of conversation about this, and we discussed the fact that the structure that we'd like to charge would, this new proposed structure would fill some holes in the old structure that we had. And we also think that it would streamline billing for us and nevertheless be fair in terms of what we're charging the organizations that are there. Our goal is not to really raise funds, but just to offset the actual impact on the schools.
Okay, great. Anyone have anything to add? Okay, can I get a motion for the approval of the rates for building use?
So moved.
Okay, Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
I am a yes, motion is carried. Okay, now we had next for on the action items is the superintendent's 2021-2022 goals. And Emily, do you want to speak to those? There's
I
a
mean,
memo.
yes, just to say that I think probably what's apparent here is that my goals are derived from the district goals. And so you'll see that they, follow along in close alignment to the goals that we discussed last month.
Make a motion to approve the goals.
So second.
All right, Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yay.
Carol,
Yes.
Amanda?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I am a yes as well. So motion is carried. We need a vote to change the school building committee membership and add the new facilities director. Tom, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his
Tom Carey.
Tom Carey, thank you.
So and it would be to replace Ken Aries with Tom Carey, is that correct? Yeah.
Yes, so Ken would come, well, I don't know if he's coming off. Because, anyway, let's just add Tom for now.
Just add, okay.
All right, so we're going to add,
Wait,
can I get a
is Ken
motion?
gonna stay on the, did you wrangle him into staying on the committee?
Well, maybe.
Let's hope Ken isn't watching this meeting. No, I'm kidding.
Is rank a
Maybe.
word? I don't know, but
It is a word. It is a word. We're gonna see how that one plays out. So for now, we're just gonna appoint Tom Carey to the SBC. So can I get a motion to appoint Tom?
so moved.
Second.
All right, Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Carol,
Yeah.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes. Okay. Approval of the November 9th, 2021 meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Nope. Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes, motion is carried. And finally, we have an acceptance, and this is always fun to do. We need to approve the acceptance of a gift from the Westwood High PTO. This is actually a grant in the amount of, okay, it's not letting me access it.
$2,432.50.
Thank you. And it's for a whole series, it's a whole bunch of series and events that they are sponsoring at the high school, and looks like a lot of great stuff on there. So I just need a motion to approve this gift.
So moved.
Second.
All right, discussion? All right, Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
and I am a yes, motion is carried. All right, moving on to new business. I just wanted to say, to formally thank Ken Aries for his 13 years of service to the district, and on behalf of the school committee, express our deep appreciation for him, to him, everything about him. He, I've gotten to know Ken very well with the building project over the past 3 or 4 years, and he has been a godsend on that project, and still manages to do everything all the time, was always working, and is the most pleasant person to work with. And I think that this is a great opportunity for him and a huge loss for us. And I'm very sad, and I'm still in denial, but I just wanted to really wish him well and thank him formally from the school committee. And I don't know if anyone has anything to add. I know a lot of you have worked with him for many years. Everyone is nodding their heads.
Oh, yes, thanks. Yes, thanks, Ken. And we know where to
Thank you,
find you
Ken.
right here in town. So
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
I know where you
he
live,
is.
Ken.
He is still in town, much to his chagrin.
Thank you.
So anyway, thank you, Ken. I did want to acknowledge that. All right. Is there any other new business? Just one more plug for the January 6th office hours. Come chat with Carol and Amanda. They're very happy to see you.
Bring popcorn.
Bring popcorn, bring snacks, junior mints, whatever you want.
Junior mints are good. Yeah.
Junior mints are good. 7 to 8:30 again, PM. It's an evening session at the professional development room in the district office.
Also, I just was wondering about for the meetings like this, is it possible maybe to have just a report back from the school committee members who attend these things of what did they learn or what did they find interesting, to share that with the full committee? That'd be helpful if that's possible.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea, Charlie. I apologize. We didn't do that for November. I can gather my thoughts, and we can try and do a quick summary in January of the November one. And then we'll hear from the January folks as well. So, all right, anything else? Nope. Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Charlie,
Yes.
Tony,
yes.
Carol,
Yes.
and Amanda.
Yes.
All right. We are adjourned. Oh, I'm a yes. So we are adjourned. So
Thank
thank you,
you.
everyone.
Hey,
I hope
everybody.
everyone has a wonderful
you.
holiday season.
Yeah, happy holidays.